I am afraid of bringing the disease home to my family because I spend the whole day transporting people. I am afraid of dying. That is what scares me so much.
We ask the President of the Republic and his partners to truly find a solution for Ebola. Because Ebola is coming back to kill us all. We already know what happened before. Many people die. If you allow it to return again and kill the population once more, it will be terrible.
Officials are racing to contain a rare strain of the Ebola virus in the Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo, which has infected hundreds of people. Now, the WHO has declared the outbreak an international emergency, adding that the risk of the epidemic is higher at the national and regional level, but unlikely to spread much further. The Ebola Bandibujo strain has no approved vaccine, and the WHO says the virus was able to spread undetected for weeks because of the delay in diagnosis. It warns the disease could be spreading faster, and the scale is much larger than the hundreds of known cases. Ongoing conflict has weakened healthcare systems, and cross-border movements is making it harder to contain the outbreak.
We are also talking with people who are in conflict for them to understand that they need to give us access. Because we are not part of the conflict, we are there to support the population. We already did it in the past. And this is the approach that we have. From our side, we are making sure that we have all tools that we can bring. From their side, we are looking for the understanding to give us access to support people.
The Congolese Health Ministry says the first person died on April 24th. It was in Bunia, the capital of Ituri province in the northeast of DRC. The outbreak spread to Goma and Butembo, North Kivu province, which is partly under control of the M23 rebel group. Now, Uganda's health ministry has confirmed at least 2 Ebola cases in the capital Kampala from people who had traveled from the DRC. The East and Central African region is now on high alert. Despite facing pressure, Uganda says it trusts its healthcare workers and public support to contain the Ebola outbreak. Darren Alan Cheyune reports.
Life may appear normal here, but Uganda's capital Kampala is on alert because of the Ebola virus outbreak. Unlike the neighboring Democratic Republic of the Congo, where cases have piled up quickly, Uganda's situation seems to be contained so far.
All the alerts we have had, we have taken the samples, even the ones that we have brought in our isolation. All the tests we have are negative. We don't have any positive. Even the sample we got from Hoima, from Western Nile, from Toroko, all of them are negative. So at the moment, we still have those 2 imported cases.
An Ebola case is confirmed after symptoms have fully manifested between 2 to 21 days. Due to the health risks, President Yoweri Museveni has called off the Martyrs' Day celebrations, marked every 3rd of June. About 2 million pilgrims from Uganda and the rest of the world gather here to commemorate Martyrs' Day. With just about 2 weeks to the day, most preparations have been stopped to contain the spread of the Bundibujo strain of the Ebola virus. The World Health Organization says the outbreak may have begun a couple of months earlier, which explains its fast spread in the eastern DRC. However, Uganda is pushing back against the international community's travel bans and criticism.
We're encouraging you to go about your lives, but we're also saying be vigilant. Look out for the symptoms, temperature, diarrhea, those symptoms that we know. And if you see them, go to the health facility nearest to you. You shall get the help you need.
Since the turn of the century, Uganda has successfully combated 8 Ebola outbreaks. The latest strain has no approved vaccine, but Uganda's health ministry is keen on partnering with its DRC counterparts to create a buffer zone and stop the disease from spreading further across the border. Darren Alan Cheyune, Africa Matters, Kampala.
Now, the WHO has recommended health screening at DRC borders and called on countries not to place restrictions on travel and trade. but some countries disagree.
Yes, the border is closed. But first, I would like to point out that Rwanda had no right to close the border, because the international health regulations state that borders must not be closed in the event of an epidemic. That's what the international health regulations say. People and goods must be allowed to move freely, but public health measures must be put in place. That is the international health regulations.
When it comes to protecting our people against all threats. So even the Ebola threat, we take measures very fast. So the first thing we did was to close these borders and put up measures to make sure that there is no crossover. And we are learning from our history. In the past, during the outbreak of COVID, this is what we did. We put up measures in our country and we saved a lot of lives. So today we are doing the same.
Let's hear more from Dr. Ahmed Ogwell Ouma. He's the CEO and president of Village Reach, as well as a former deputy director general at Africa CDC. He joins me from Nairobi, Kenya. Thank you, Dr. Ogwell, for joining us here on Africa Matters to discuss this important issue of what is happening at the DRC. But I would like to understand, why does the DRC keep battling Ebola outbreaks, and how can the current one be contained given the challenges?
The Ebola virus, the reservoir are fruit bats. And fruit bats are found in certain parts of the continent, particularly in the DRC. So the interaction between human population and the fruit bat population increases the risk of Ebola virus jumping from the fruit bat into the human population. And this is why we see a recurrence of Ebola virus, particularly in the DRC. Now, this current outbreak has many challenges. Key amongst them being the area where the outbreak has occurred has relative insecurity, and therefore getting to the communities there, health workers being able to engage with the community is that much more difficult, and therefore there is an additional challenge there. The second is the current geopolitical situation is such that we have less support coming from outside of the DRC into supporting different health programs, including the current outbreak. That reduction in support makes it difficult for all the pillars that we need to respond to be adequately funded and to be adequately capacitated. So this is the second level. The third is that the area is relatively near both Uganda, South Sudan, and very active population movement. And that increases the risk, of course, of someone who may not know that they are unwell moving from one community to another. So for these three reasons, there are complications with this current outbreak.
All right. And it's good you've given us reasons as to why that is happening. But, I mean, this is not the first time that the outbreak is happening in the DRC. We're talking about back then in 1976, when the first Ebola outbreak was actually discovered, when it was then known as Zaire. But then why is DRC getting it wrong, or the region at large? Because when you compare the outbreaks in DRC, is a lot compared to other countries within the continent.
The DRC is getting it quite right, because every time there is an outbreak, there's very good experience in the DRC within the government and the non-governmental sectors, and the responses have progressively been shorter, which means that when an outbreak occurs, it is stopped in a short while. But we must also appreciate the fact that the area where the virus is circulating amongst bats happens to be in the DRC. And therefore, any interaction between the human population and the bat population will increase that risk.
Right.
And the DRC, every time there has been an outbreak, the responses have been quite fast. depending on where it is located, and the interruption of circulation of the virus has also progressively been shorter over time. But we need to also see this in light of the health system. When a health system is functioning well, then we identify cases faster and we can be able to manage those cases more effectively. In this situation, the two big challenges I see, one is that this particular variant does not have a vaccine, and therefore we can only do community engagement so that we stop the spread. And for those who have been affected, we give them adequate support so the body can be able to recover. Second, apart from the vaccine, second is the location. The location is an area where there is insecurity, and therefore the usual methodology does not lend itself to this particular situation.
All right, Dr. Guel, you've just touched into some of the next questions that I'm about to ask you, but we'll get into that in-depth, discussion about the conflict and also the vaccines. But then I'd just like to ask you this. So should countries be shutting borders? Because you've seen that is what Rwanda is doing. Should they be, shutting regional borders to stop the spread of the Ebola virus? From your experience?
Shutting borders is not a very effective public health measure. Our experience during COVID showed us that dealing with communities is more effective than dealing with countries. So, for example, in this situation, DRC is a big country with a lot of people, and the risk level of someone who is far away from the center of the outbreak is not one that should result in borders being closed or travel advisories being issued. And both the closure of borders and travel advisories have been shown to not be effective in controlling the spread. What is effective is good surveillance. We need to pick out those who have been exposed and then ensure that they are not moving outside of the area of exposure. But blanket border closure, blanket travel advisories, these are not effective public health measures.
All right. And let's now get into that discussion about the vaccine. And there is a discussion about using the Ebola vaccines to treat the virus that is the new variant that has been reported in the DRC. Can this actually work?
This we leave to the scientists to be able to show how effective it will be. By and large, viruses, you want the vaccine to be as specific as possible so that it gives you the highest possible success rate. When we use vaccines from other variants, it will mean that we don't get to the success rates that a specific vaccine developed for this variant will give. And so for purposes of identifying the level of effectiveness of the vaccines that we have, those studies can be able to be done. But from a public health perspective, it will be preferable that we get a vaccine that is specific to this variant, and therefore it gives us high levels of efficacy when it comes to protecting the populations that are affected.
All right, and it's good that as we began this conversation, you're talking about the current geopolitical events that we are seeing. But then how are local and global factors such as the conflict in the Eastern DRC community involvement and the Iran war and aid cuts shaping the response to the outbreak?
Response to outbreaks, I will divide them into three parts. The first part is preparedness, where we get ready before an outbreak comes. And the DRC has been having a lot of experience in managing outbreaks, so their capacity is decent. It's not where we would like it to be because the country is large, but it is decent. So we start from before the outbreak. Now, during the outbreak is when we need a surge of capacity, whether it is expert, whether it is test kits, whether it is vaccines, or whether it is the medical products that we need to manage those who have been exposed. This second part is where there is a challenge because resources have become fewer, and therefore support that is getting into the affected area has also become less than what we would have expected. So the geopolitical situation, the world is distracted by war in different parts of the world, and yet we have an outbreak that needs our attention here. It means that divided attention can result in delay in providing the support that is required. Now, for the active conflict on the ground, every time that you want to reach communities, you want to do it in an environment which is peaceful, free of conflict. And as soon as we introduce conflict, it means reaching communities becomes difficult. They move based on the safety of the areas where they live, and even the health workers also need to move in safety. It means that there are a lot of permutations, speaking with different groups that are in charge of different areas to make sure that there is safe passage for health workers. So it becomes very complex when you want to address an active outbreak like this one in an area which is relatively insecure.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Ahmed Ogwel Ouma. He's the CEO and the president of Village Reach, as well as former Deputy Director General at Africa CDC. Thank you for talking to us here on Africa Matters. Still to come here on Africa Matters.
My name is Victoria Amunga, and I'll show you how these teenagers in Kenya are redefining basketball despite being deaf.
To South Africa next, where U.S. tech giant Equinix is facing a legal challenge over its plans to build 2 data centers near Cape Town. Now, human rights groups warn that the project threatens to drain the city's already low water and power supplies. Hop Kirubi has more.
Cape Town's informal settlements lay bare the reality of urban inequality. Thousands of people here are facing a daily struggle to survive. Even a night of rest requires extensive preparation.
We do not have proper houses. Look at the condition of my house. The rains are always a big concern to us. When sleeping, I cover the bed with plastic sheets to protect myself from the rain.
Just 2 kilometers away, this multi-million-dollar construction site belongs to Equinix, a company running a global network that carries much of the world's internet traffic. But a legal challenge claims the massive 160-megawatt project could create a serious environmental impact on the area.
And we put objections on saying actually there's just not enough information here for a decision to be taken, and that this is a huge project. There is nothing about water, nothing substantive about emissions. It's incredibly limited on electricity.
Community organizers argue that building major tech hubs near local townships could put residents at risk and are demanding a complete shutdown of the project.
If these data centers are so important, why don't you go build them next to the Huguenot Tunnel, far away from people there? There won't be any vibrations affecting communities or noise made by these servers affecting communities. There won't be the issue of water being taken from communities to cool down the servers.
University of Cambridge research findings show that AI data centers worldwide raise temperatures around them by an average of 2 degrees Celsius. Cape Town already suffers from severe water and power shortages. Critics say the growing demand from data centers could place even more pressure on the city.
We had rolling blackouts happening, just not in the very near distant past. It was last year we had some load shedding. So what is the rush to put in place technology that we don't know what the knock-on effect it will have on the lives of ordinary South Africans?
Equinix has 30 days to respond to objections raised by the community here. The city will then take up to 6 months to decide if the data centers can be built. For locals here, protecting access to water and electricity has become a fight for survival. Hope Kirubi, Africa Matters.
To Rwanda next, where rising fuel prices are pushing more drivers to consider moving away from the fuel-guzzling cars to electric vehicles. Many say the switch is helping cut costs, but comes with its own set of challenges. Diana Iriza reports from the capital, Kigali.
Valerie Nguruziza has worked as a taxi driver in Kigali for 10 years. He's now using electric vehicle, which he says is cutting costs.
If I get a passenger of 10,000 francs and spend only 2,000 on charging, then the remaining 8,000 francs goes home.
Valerie isn't the only one to see the benefits of moving to electric. Longtai Auto Rwanda sold only 6 electric vehicles during its opening month in June last year. For the rest of 2025, it sold 49 EVs. But in April alone, the company sold 80 vehicles, and demand for electric vehicles is on the rise.
When we started the electric mobility revolution, it wasn't easy. The awareness, the people to understand that this was the future. But as years went by, we saw people's mind shift to what we see today. But about a month ago, we were selling, I would say, maybe 100 units of EVs in a month, but I've seen the number doubling.
Thanks to the US-Iran war, petrol prices are rising on a global scale. But electric vehicles don't just benefit drivers due to the cheaper running costs.
Electric vehicles, of course, the first thing what is very good is the country's forex, foreign money which is going out of the country, it will stay here, which can be used for better purposes or reasons for the well-being of the population.
But for now, it requires investments of about $900 million for electric vehicle purchases and charging infrastructure to fund its electric mobility potential.
The government calls upon all public institutions to ensure that at least 30% of the newly purchased vehicles are fully electric. This move is expected to boost not just demand and investment, but also help cut emissions and improve air quality.
But the transition is not without its drawbacks. Rwanda is facing the same challenges as most countries, seeing a rise in EVs.
We electric motorcyclists struggle so much with these charging stations. The time I could have used 4 batteries is spent charging.
The government says Rwanda imported over 1,500 electric vehicles between July last year and March this year alone. For drivers like Valerie, electric mobility is already getting them and their businesses charging ahead. Diana Iriza, Africa Matters, Kigali, Rwanda.
And finally, we head to Kenya, where deaf teenagers are getting a chance to play basketball. One program is encouraging children with disabilities to develop their skills in sports that are usually dominated by shouts and whistles. Victoria Amunga has more from Nairobi.
At this court at Nairobi's Kinyanjui Road Primary School, 13-year-old Asaf Gashanja is among a group of players receiving the instructions in silence. They are deaf, so they receive their tactics and encouragement through sign language. He's thrilled to be competing with kids of the same age.
I learn in a deaf class, and then we are separated from the hearing class. But when we are playing basketball, we are able to engage with the hearing and the deaf, and that makes me so happy.
At least 52,000 deaf teens in Kenya like Asaf are able to play basketball through an initiative called Basketball Experience for Students with Disabilities.
Despite the vast number of people worldwide who live with a hearing impairment, they remain underrepresented in many global sports.
According to a report by the World Federation for the Deaf, the lack of sign language interpreters by sport government bodies and little information to help include deaf players excludes those with hearing difficulties. But help is at hand.
The program runs once a week in the schools, in what they call clinics. You'll see what is called clinics. Clinics of 1.5 hours every once in a week in all the participating schools. And at the end of every year, there is one final game. A game that brings together all the kids that are participating.
Schools have now begun educating parents of children with such disabilities.
We have sensitized the parents about the importance of their children being in co-curricular activities, not because of the basketball, but also before the basketball, we were sensitizing them about the importance of the co-curricular to their children. And we have also talked to them, sensitized the children, and they have been motivated. Even watching the others play, they have been so much motivated to play.
Let's go. At least 40 basketball coaches have been trained to work with deaf players, including Brian Ragwe.
We're starting to include them in everything we're doing, and they're starting from the grassroots level where we're dealing with kids, introducing them to the sport early. Most of the people who are disabled one or another end up playing the game in college or outside school.
After football, basketball is one of Kenya's most popular team sports. Now with new initiatives and specialized coaching, deaf kids like Asaf can enjoy and compete in the sport too. Victoria Amunga, Africa Matters, Nairobi, Kenya.
That's our show this week. Share your thoughts and suggestions about how the latest Ebola outbreak in the DRC can be stopped, or leave your comments about any other stories on our Africa Matters YouTube page or on X. Thanks for watching, and it's goodbye from me, Brenda Zeda Radido.